I'm gonna do some questions, and you're gonna answer. And okay. So here we are.
Wait.
Automation.
Wait.
Wait.
Second,
This is the first episode. Let's go right off the bat. The topic is automation. Okay.
Welcome, everybody.
Yeah. Welcome.
I hope at this point you know who we are.
Exactly. It's the first episode, so everyone knows us by now.
The Marketing Rockers podcast.
Should we call our listeners something specific?
The Rockers?
The groupies. Oh, yes. Welcome, groupies. Okay, it's perfect. It's perfect. So, today, right now, our topic is automation, right?
Mm-hmm. Something very, very current and close to our hearts.
Exactly. And by automation, we are referring to certain features on platforms of digital marketing, such as AAA campaigns or Google app campaigns, or even auto bids or dynamic ads, everything that can be replaced. Human work can be replaced by an algorithm of some sort. Right. So my question to you, Linus, because everyone knows you already.
Hi, everybody.
Okay. Is what excites you, or maybe just since we're going with doom or opportunity, what frightens you?
So from excitement to fear.
Exactly. Let's go with let's go with fear before.
The fear is the bigger one for you.
Exactly. And then let's go to the bright side. But you are an online marketing manager, like I am.
Yes, I still am.
So you deal with Facebook and all the other platforms. What frightens you about automation right now?
The fear is on many layers. One, of course, is that my work becomes less and less important. That, of course, happens on multiple levels. I either stop choosing who I really want to target. I stop choosing how to target them, what to bid on them, etc., etc. On the flip side, I'm also wondering, of course, what does it mean for apps in general, right? I mean, if we give all the options and everything that is possible into Facebook's hands, and we don't decide anymore, this means that on the flip side, Facebook decides everything. So if everyone just does that with their app, Facebook essentially chooses who gets to be big and who doesn't. That is another quite big, dangerous point to my mind, and this one. And then ultimately, if you think about the big 2 or 3, depending on how you see it, they're also becoming quite the gatekeepers with their huge audiences. It is necessary to be also successful on them. And once the algorithm decides your app doesn't really work with it, what do? You don't really have the option anymore to go for small user pockets or figure out smart messaging that will make your app a success, right? Those are some of the fears that I am encountering. Currently, of course, we are all very excited about the opportunity that we have with the AAA. As for us, as also probably for many people out there, it's working amazingly. It is so amazing that there's almost no future to our minds not using it going forward.
I mean, but you also become, as you mentioned, you become super dependent on it. And if everything moves into the AAA direction, which I mean, for us, luckily, it's working very well, right? Mm-hmm. But if Facebook decides, as you mentioned about the gatekeeping, if Facebook decides just to scrap everything else and just go with the AAA campaigns, I mean, Google already does that. You're obliged. Exactly, you're obliged to use the Google App campaigns. Otherwise, you cannot do anything. If something doesn't work on a AAA campaign, it will not work anywhere else because there's no other option. and that is truly terrifying, because if you have, and going a little bit on the personal side, or at least from where we stand right now, or the job that we work, we have some niche games, right? Long-term strategy games.
Quite niche.
I'm going to do a pause right now because there's some dishwasher sound. Okay.
Oh.
So, personally, since we are developing and publishing and advertising long-term strategy games, we are a niche. We are in a niche industry, or in a niche market, and it can be very hard to advertise. Or if this doesn't work, I mean, our audience is smaller than the usual game, right? We're not going for the people that play Clash Royale or PUBG or all these huge games or even hyper casuals, right? So we sometimes have to dig into pockets of value that sometimes are not reachable with a automated tool like this, and we have to go with interest targeting, because we know that our users specifically like something. And if these features gatekeep and don't allow us to do that, and if the AAA is working for us right now, but it could not work in the future, this might limit our ability to make new games and advertise new games. And that's also my fear.
And we felt before we got AAA into our hands, we of course tried Google App campaigns, and we very quickly had to realize that our games just don't work with it properly, right? These algorithms, or at least how these platforms are designed at the moment, they really like, for example, early conversions. And if you don't have early conversions in your app, you might be already, at least to a degree, outside of the competition. So they also kind of force you to think, when you create something, that you create it in a way that it gives the right signals to these platforms. So that also creates kind of a new challenge, but it also determines a little bit of what you actually do when you want to publish an app. Whatever it may be. So that is also interesting in that regard, that they are taking that over as well.
Yeah. On the same side, or on same topic, these apps also require an immense amount of data, and I mean, it could be that we don't have the budget in the future. So because, I mean, you know, we work in a niche market, so costs will inevitably go higher. I mean, in every market, but cost of acquisition will inevitably go higher. But I mean, it will get harder and harder to get more users, and the CPAs will rise at some point. And that means that to get the same amount of data that we're getting right now, it will be way more expensive to give these apps the amount of data they need to work.
Mm-hmm.
So that could also be another problem in the future that we might encounter. That I mean, we have games that we have been advertising for 5 years now, and we've tested different kinds of stuff, but we're not obliged to use one type of app, one type of campaign that requires an immense amount of data, because we have different stuff to test. If we are obliged to go with this and this doesn't work, or we don't have, since the CPAs are so high, we don't have the budget to reach that point when we have enough data for the campaign to work, we're also, I mean, it could be very tricky to advertise our app as well, right? Another thing, and this is more on a personal side as well, I think you mentioned before, and on the personal side, if these app campaigns do all the stuff for us, right? They are basically replacing a human being, or the optimizations that a human being would do.
Is coming close to. Mm-hmm.
Or is coming close to. What does it mean for our jobs, right? Because companies can just decide, hey, Facebook can do all this stuff. We don't need 4, 5, 6 marketers doing these optimizations. We'll just do Facebook app campaigns, and we just need one guy to optimize them, right?
Yeah, and in a very funny way, we're kind of doing it by ourselves as well, right? I mean, in the way we got excited about this stuff and how we're using it, we're even supporting it in a great way, of course.
True.
And then we even get from our friends from the business, we get the information that they are just dropping random thumbnails in there and just random lines in there, and then they see what comes out of it. And as it stands, those campaigns, they do find the people that will just go for something random. It might not even be related to your app or game. And it works out, right? So we're kind of also actively supporting this whole situation.
So you're saying we might be digging our graves by...
I think we might be digging our own graves right now. If we're not careful, then definitely. Definitely. Of course, we are always talking mainly about apps in this relationship. Of course, there's also the website or web traffic side of things that are not as optimized yet at this very moment. But who knows what comes up. But certainly for app marketing, I think we are kind of shoveling our own holes already in that regard.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
At the same time, you also mentioned that it can be frustrating because here it goes.
You want to pause? It would be interesting how that sounds when you put it together at the end.
Yeah.
Maybe I can find a way to make it smooth.
Or not recording while the washing machine is on. God damn it! Why did I do? Damn you, Alex!
You just turned it on without thinking about it?
It's in the other room. It's just the pipes.
Yeah. Okay. You cannot hear the washing machine at all, but you can hear the water.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So on the AAA, I'm gonna clap again. It can also be frustrating from the creative side. These campaigns can be frustrating on the creative side. As you mentioned, we can spend even months generating creatives or talking with creative agencies to generate creatives that look very good, and we think they can be very successful because they are eye-catching. But then you put random thumbnails on these campaigns and they work. So I'm not saying this is bad specifically because, I mean, and in the end, you're doing your job right. You're getting users in this case, players that are spending money in your game. But at the same time, you spend so much time and so much effort trying to get the perfect creative, or at least getting a beautiful creative that you think are going to work. But then this competes against a random thumbnail, and the random thumbnail brings the most value. It can be a little bit frustrating, I think.
Yeah, it's rather funny. I mean, we've always seen this coming. I think you can talk hours with several people when we discuss the topic of ad testing, doing A/B tests on ads in general. We've never been sure what the actual results of these things are, because it's always, figuring out very quickly a path for one creative and kind of forgets about the rest. So we've been always in this situation where it was kind of, what does the algorithm like in the end? And it doesn't even matter afterwards if you would retest the other creators. Often case, it would just find other people that would like those ads, right? So it was always kind of this situation of what does it matter? And then, of course, going from that, if you talk to a lot of account managers out there for the different platforms, obviously, they would even tell you outright to just rather go for the mass of creators and don't try to trickle it down into this perfectly distilled image that you want to portray of your game, right? So they're also really supportive of the idea of just going for the mass.
Quantity.
Hundreds.
It goes back to the data point. I mean, it's a quantity game more than a quality game now, and the algorithm will find the perfect person to show it, and it will also show it the perfect ad to the perfect person. And yeah, we're reaching a point where the algorithm will almost certainly beat the person that is advertising, and it is frightening that this can take out or at least remove some of the jobs that exist now, right?
Yeah, it's funny somehow, right? You always think of, I need to tell the people how my game looks and it will convert well and those people will pay inside my game and it will be awesome afterwards. They will stay forever. But ultimately, it seems to be that rather the case that you put something in there and maybe it's just, let's say you have an image, it shows something, it has a yellow dot in the right top corner. And Facebook already knows. Someone on Facebook already reacted to a yellow dot in the top right corner for some reason. It doesn't even matter what that reason was. And they know already it will click on this point. And they also know that this person had a positive engagement of whatever was behind this creative, right?
Yeah.
So in some way, I can really see with this amount of data that those, I don't want to always say Facebook generally, but those platforms have, you can really see how steering whoever you want to go for with creative might even not make that much sense. It's probably rather a gamble on variety than really going into one certain direction, right?
Yeah, the other question is how right or how, if you agree with Facebook having that much data, but that's a discussion for another episode. Another episode.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not all too bad, right? So I think we could go to the second question of the day, which is, what excites you? I mean, you already started saying something about it because you said, yeah, AAA campaigns were available, so we just went there and tried something and put 50 creatives in it and see what happened, and it worked very well. So we were excited, obviously, that this thing works well for our games and our company. Mm-hmm. But what else excites you about this automation in these marketing platforms?
For some, I mean, what I already mentioned is that Facebook kind of steers whatever you put in there to the right person, right? If you jump off that point, it also makes very clear that you might not be even capable to get to these people in any other way, right? How do you really know the interest of that person that likes that yellow dot? How do you really know that you want the person in your game that likes this yellow dot in the top right corner, right? You're by default, if you're thinking in a traditional way, you're already missing a lot of the information that those platforms have, and where they just inherently know that this person will work for you. But from the way you're thinking of them from the outside, you cannot know at the same time. So somehow, despite having less options, it could also give you the opportunity to reach more people of whom you just didn't know they existed so far, right? And I think that is something that's very interesting. And that's also something where I can see platforms like AAA, also Google App Campaigns to be an addition to what we do anyway, if they not take over completely in the near future, right? That's something where I see an advantage.
Yeah, I completely agree. So we know that these platforms already have the reach, 2 billion. I know that Facebook is over 2 billion.
How many people are in the world?
Instagram is over 1 billion. We cannot forget that WhatsApp is part of Facebook. We don't know if the data is transferred, but I mean, who knows? How many people use Google nowadays? Snapchat already also has value optimization, so we could go with that one as well. TikTok doesn't feature it right away, but they are probably above the 500 million users already, and still available in the US as of this recording.
Knock on wood.
So we have the reach to reach those users in those platforms. But at the same time, if we go with interest targeting, we have a persona, or at least we know some of our users, and we know how they look like, right? We know their interests, we know their age, we also know their demographics. So we're going to probably target users that are similar to the ones that we know that play our games, and in the end they pay, because this is a business in the end. But these types of campaigns allow us to reach people that we might not think they are our target, right? Facebook obviously knows more than we do, and it is an excellent way to reach those users that we might not reach them if we go for a similar persona or similar profile of the ones that we know that work.
Right.
And I think that's awesome.
Kind of in the traditional way, we definitely trap us in our own, thoughts, in our own way of thinking about what our users should be, right?
Exactly. It is a vicious circle. So you get the users in, they will spend money, so you can generate a lookalike list from those lists, and they will probably target users super similar to this one, and it's a vicious cycle. You cannot get out of that. You can also analyze those users. Those users will give you the same profile, so you'll target the same profile again. At least this will give you the chance to get some fresh blood into the games, and also at the same time it will refresh the lookalikes and make the traditional campaigns a little bit better if they are still
maybe
alive by then.
If they can still compete at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah. Also from a point of we talked about creative before. Creative also faces the exact same problem, right? You know something works, and then you don't go away from it. You just iterate on it and keep iterating on it, but you might never jump to the point where you do something completely else that might even convert better, right? Because it's just a very risky move. But if you go with platforms like AAA, for example, and you have the opportunity to just put everything in there with very little risk, you might just expand also your overall look and feel of your creative, and in that way also explore a little bit further in that, which then you can also use for other platforms obviously as well. If you realize, just putting 2 colors on it, for example, works better.
And expanding on concepts, and even expanding on concepts. If you find something completely different that works, you can just expand on that concept and create new variations of it, right?
Yeah, we're praising this thing too much. I feel almost
I know. But also regarding creative, as you mentioned, if it takes time, or at least if it takes less time than before, because it's all automated and you don't have to worry about targeting and such, you have more free time, right? And that doesn't mean necessarily that the company that you work for needs less marketers. You can just dedicate your time to something else, and creative can be one of the things. You can dedicate more time to creative concepts and creative creation generation. You can dedicate more time on that side, because if everything is automated, creative will be the only variable that you can touch. You can touch copy, and you can touch images on videos, and you will have more time to dedicate to that topic. And we know for a fact that this can be the winning or losing. I can find the word now. It's not topic, but or the winning or losing point of your campaign. So from our experience, we always had trouble with Snapchat and recently TikTok, but we also didn't dedicate the ideal amount of time to create creatives that really adapt to the platform, right? It's very easy to just get the creatives that worked on Facebook and go, hey, we have a creative from Facebook. It is 9:16, so it fits Snapchat perfectly and fits TikTok perfectly. Let's just put the same creative there, and it will magically work. And it won't work because it's a completely different platform with a completely different demographic. And and even Snapchat and TikTok, we haven't tried it, but it can be that the demographic is also different and it requires different. The platform has a different feel and different content. So, we're seeing now that the creatives that we have on Snapchat that are working are the ones that didn't work on Facebook, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if this automates some of the process and you can dedicate more time to creative, you can make other platforms work with the time that you have to dedicate for it. Or you can also dedicate more time to Facebook creatives to make the Facebook work even better.
If that then matters still, of course.
Exactly. Yeah. Or in the end, you can just put a random thumbnail and that will work better than anything else, right? Yeah. That's what happened to us on Snapchat, that we had super flashy creatives, and then the one that was working better was a simple screenshot.
Yeah. No, but it's definitely true. Investing time into other platforms was often kind of an opportunity loss also, right? You kind of might be even wasting your time by not dedicating it to the big two, but rather try something else that then in the end, because you don't really spend the time on it, doesn't work. So it was kind of a double loss in many ways, which I think is also part of the reason why so many networks kind of died off over time. And you just generally hear a little bit less about it. I also find it interesting. You talked about you have more time for other platforms, maybe more time for creative, but it's also with the way these platforms work. It's also interesting how marketing and the product itself might move a bit closer, since the marketer, of course, is the gap between product and the people out there, and you might be becoming that person that has to understand what do we have to feed the platform to make this work. And it doesn't even necessarily mean that you have to create the app in a way that it is perfect for the algorithm, but making adjustments inside the app, certain signals that could be valuable for the algorithm to understand who's valuable to you, and making those adjustments, working with the teams together to kind of make it fit with the overall platform, right?
No, I completely agree.
So those, I think in many companies, as in ours as well, product and marketing is already very much aligned. But this might be just becoming even stronger going forward, in my opinion, with these platforms.
I think another thing, I think we mentioned it before, is I think we mentioned on the bad side, but I think I want to mention on the good side. It is becoming very hard to beat the algorithm, right?
Yeah,
and
possible.
That is exactly so. It is a bad. It is a bad thing that the algorithm is better than us at figuring out who are going to be the best users for our games or products or whatever. But that is bad because it takes our jobs, right? But on the flip side, it is good because it is increased performance, right? So we can only do so much with our human brains, but then we have a platform that can find exactly who is going to pay the most in our game or going to enjoy the game the most, so he will at the end pay a little bit. That is what we are in the business of making money as well, right? This is not an NGO. We have games, but we are in the gaming industry. But in the end, the company has to have a profit. And is there anything better than an algorithm that can help marketers bring or marketers have and launch profitable campaigns? I obviously have to say that is a positive and not a negative from the business perspective. And it is. And it could have, and not, this is not from the personal side, obviously, right now, but it could even help smaller companies to get their games off the ground. if they don't have to make a big investment in a marketing department. I mean, if they can save some budget or have some budget to run some marketing campaigns, this will obviously benefit them to get their game out there, and they can advertise the game without a big marketing team. And hopefully the game will be successful, so they can hire more marketers, so they can scale the game. Or even maybe getting noticed by a big publisher, so they can get them under their wing and they can scale the game.
But I also think this raises some questions at the same time. So, of course, Facebook or other platforms, don't want to always say Facebook, but it's just the first one that comes to mind, obviously. Of course, they also have an inherent interest of keeping you running as long as possible, right? So there will also be an interest of keeping apps successful that have the potential of running indefinitely, right? So if you have an app that is maybe even a paid app, for example, so it has one payment and that's it, in a way that is one signal that this can work with. And it also has kind of a limited amount. There is no re-engagement. There is nothing else that can really happen. So what happens then, right? Is this app already for the platform less interesting and will maybe not even be shown, for example? There's kind of in the power for them to decide, right? Where do we make most of our money? So kind of, we see this opportunity as true, but at the same time, it might also be a very biased opportunity to our style of game, right?
I mean, that's where the industry developed, right? It's the biggest games are the free-to-play games with in-app purchases or ads to monetize. It is the most successful one, and there hasn't been a lot of people being successful with the paid games or the premium games. But that's also because it fits the platform as well, or at least the mobile platform. It's the one that the users like the most because they can try the game and then decide if they want to pay or not. It's more of a business model decision. If you want to go, it's right now, it's almost guaranteed that if you want to be successful on mobile, you have to go to free to play. It is kind of a bummer for the games that don't want to be that, but at the same time, it is what it is, right?
It is true. But that, of course, and I'm not really sure if that's a point for Doom or opportunity, that might also require just something else to grow, right? Maybe,
I agree.
For example, like Apple is now doing it with Apple Search Ads, giving more power onto the in-system advertising, right? That you can, even though you maybe don't have a perfect algorithm app, you can still kind of get it in front of people's eyes inside of their own platform, right? And maybe we need something more like this for people that won't want to work in the business in this way, right? But, of course, this might mean that you lose the opportunity to reach the biggest audience.
Yes.
That you can have.
But at the same time, you can decide at any time which kind of route you want to take, and you know that if you go to the free to play side or the free to try side, you will have that or these platforms that you could take advantage of to reach a bigger audience.
No, definitely.
Okay, so we went through the dooms, or the threats. We also
went through some opportunities.
We also went through some opportunities. So, what's your big end statement? Is this is Judgment Day soon? It's going to be soon.
I mean, Judgment Day would be full automation, right? I've always been kind of a social media advertising guy first. So of course, for me, this might be a looming situation that comes towards me, of course. But at the same time, it's also just a question of adapting ultimately and, going with the flow, develop your own skills for further. trying to work with those platforms, but then also kind of, how do you say, look over the pond? No, that's not the right word. How do you say it? Look past these things and see what other opportunities are there. Because now, definitely, with those platforms, you do have the time to do so. We just recently had a bigger game launch, and we prepared for it thoroughly, and we got a lot of help for this game launch as well. I can already see how the next game launch would probably be not to the same scale, and will be much, much simpler in the setup overall, having these tools to work with, which can be a nice thing. And then we can have a broader setup going from there.
Simpler sounds good, right?
Yeah. Consolidation.
I think the same. I think it can be frightening from the job perspective, but I think it will open more opportunities than the ones that will close. I think marketers will have more time to dedicate to other channels, especially, for example, influencer marketing, which is something that takes a lot of time. We know that for a fact. And if we marketers have more time to dedicate to other stuff like creative work, like other channels, smaller channels, that will give us some more experience on more stuff. People will not get stuck in the, I do Facebook marketing or I do Google marketing. That's the only thing I do, right? People use other platforms. People use YouTube and they like to be in contact with their content creators. So we can work together with content creators to advertise our games or apps or products. People use news apps or news websites, and these sometimes run through native placements, so we can dedicate more time to native advertising. So it will close some doors, most definitely, but the added time that we will have to explore new opportunities, I think it will be very interesting for the future.
Yeah. From that point on, from that perspective, I'm also very positive about it, actually. As I already said, I think just as a marketer, you have to be much more in the future than you've been before. You will need the ability to work with big data, is one thing, to really understand what is actually happening inside your app and how does that get portrayed to the platforms, for example. To have a full understanding of what is going on there. That is one thing. But then still, and I think this should be mentioned, I think there is still the decent problem with gatekeeping somehow, because it will be difficult to get, depending on what kind of app you have, to get it working on these platforms. Of course, we can discuss going with influencer, which is of course a huge channel as well in itself, native as well. But ultimately, they are still smaller channels in comparison, and it will be much, much harder to grow your game if it doesn't work on those platforms, right? So I also I would be afraid, at least, that a lot of the products become more and more similar in a way, at least in the way they onboard people, definitely, and that they will become more and more similar. I mean, they already have, but it might get even worse. I think that is still a big threat to keep in mind. But personally, at least for my job, which is kind of the biggest opportunity, or not the opportunity, the biggest topic in all of this, right? Will they take our jobs? I assume for some people that cannot adapt, I do think that is a solid danger for those people. If you're not swift on your feet and you're not ready to make changes to the way you work, I think then you will have a big problem. If you're not that kind of person, though, I think there's a lot of opportunity to be had for sure. And I'm sure us too, we are at least thinking of ourselves as swift on the feet, right? We will take opportunities as they come.
I agree. Okay, I think that's it for the automation topic.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. And
sorry for the not straight answer. If it is no more opportunity.
Don't worry.
Should we have an answer?
It's fine.
Should we
No,
have
I mean,
taken points for doom, points for opportunity, and then
it depends. As you said, it depends.
yeah, it's just scary how big those are, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, influence, huge.
Yep.
But yeah, let's see it as a positive thing.
So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Well, not seeing, right?
Well, not seeing. Well, we could create a YouTube
They can
channel.
listen.
Yeah, they can listen. So yeah, till next time.
Hope you enjoyed it.